Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Since the economic stimulus package was signed today, although it hasn't been exactly designated, I think there's guesstimates of what California will be receiving, but the process by which state and county will get allocations hasn't. But with the assumption that there will be some funding, how will that affect our budget?
That question has come up several times today, and I don't think we have, you know, a real specific answer for you. I don't even think economists, frankly, have an answer with regard to how that is going to positively, hopefully positively benefit the country, let alone our neck of the woods, Fremont. We do know that there may be projects that will flow directly to benefit Fremont, to get some shovel-ready activities going. That will hire people in the private sector to come in, and I think that would obviously have a positive stimulus to the local economy. Those projects and or any benefits that people may receive to forestall foreclosure on their homes, to help them out economically in a time of crisis or need, those are all good things that happen, but how that calculates into sales tax and property tax, you know, is really unknown at this point. It doesn't hurt, but that's about the best answer I can give.
So in the slide where it says next steps, you'll be reporting as the situation evolves, so we could be getting updates, timely updates.
The next key piece of information that we'll be receiving, and I think it's very, very important information, will be in about a month, or maybe a little more than a month, when we receive the the sales tax information that Harriet alluded to. To me, that is a fundamentally or profoundly important piece of information to help us calculate exactly where our local economy at least was several months ago during probably the most critical sales period in our year.
For the reduction, the proposed reduction of reducing the reserves from 15 to 12.5%, how does that compare to other municipalities throughout the state, or even in our local neighbor area?
We have done surveys of reserve levels throughout. There have been a number of surveys looking at reserve levels throughout the state of California, and it is really kind of all over the ballpark. We've been probably in the middle of the pack. The Government Finance Officers Association is the professional organization for municipal finance folks, and they have a recommended practice that recommends that governments, general purpose governments like the city of Fremont, maintain reserves within a range between 5 and 15% of revenues or expenditures. And the things that really determine the appropriate level of reserve is the volatility of the revenue stream, the environment within which the government exists, and its size. And interestingly, it sounds a little counterintuitive, but the larger an organization is, generally, the GFOA does believe they can have a lower percentage level of reserve because the dollars, you know, it equates to a much larger dollar amount than a small municipality for that same reserve level. So we still believe that we're still at the high end or the upper limit of the recommended practice, and probably just about in the middle of the pack with most other cities.
My last question is, I was curious for locally here, for what's the delinquency rate of our business license taxes? Because that's coming up the end of the month. Well, what was collected last year, actually?
Last year we collected $7.3 million. A good chunk of that was due to targeted enforcement efforts that bore a great deal of fruit, and the significance of that is it includes not only getting new businesses onto our business tax rolls, but also collecting delinquent business license tax from them. So we have a very high compliance rate of business license tax here in Fremont. We are on a staggered renewal basis, but the December year end is still the bulk of when most of our renewals come due. And so we are in the process of right now of processing those, and it will be probably towards the end of this month or into March before we will have good information about what that renewal rate is looking like and what the revenues are that we're getting in for that particular revenue.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple questions on property taxes. Page 6 has it as the 61.4 million first quarter, and as well as our first quarter update, as well as our revised mid-year. Just ballpark numbers. Historically speaking, the last couple of years, do you know what those numbers were? I mean, are we down a little bit from there? Are we budgeting?
We are currently budgeting 3% growth in our property tax revenue. That is down from what we have seen historically when property values were escalating as quickly as they were. So for this year, we have metered our revenue projection down to 3%. The growth in our assessed valuation was closer to 5%, but we do know that we will be affected by delinquencies, so we've factored that into our growth factor for property tax.
I just want to throw it out that I want to make sure that we're not banking on something that may not come. I had a conversation last week with the assessor, and I think my numbers are correct, but they're looking at any property that had a transaction from 06 to current, so an over a 6-year period, and they're going to do their own assessments. They're going to, lower a good chunk of those. He said there was 190,000 homes in that population, of which his first crack was that 100,000 of them were going to be devalued. So almost 1 out of every 2, and a good chunk of those have to be within Fremont. So I just want to make sure that we're not, there's another shoe that's going to drop, and I hope it doesn't drop too hard.
We are aware of that as well. The county assessor is required by law to go through and take a look at those more recent transactions to determine if in fact the value should be lowered. So people don't have to request an appeal for those. Right. He is required by law to do that. One thing that we take some comfort in, I guess, from the property tax standpoint is that when you look at where our Prop 13 base values, how those are distributed over the years, 1997 it is, or at least a year ago, was our midpoint. So half of the properties in Fremont had base year assessments prior to 1997, half were after 1997. So we do have some properties at risk for the sales that have occurred, the transactions that have occurred within the last 2 to 3 years, but those are not nearly as significant for us as they are for some other more quickly growing newer communities within Alameda County. And
they're going to, I think, make that determination in June and then notify in July, so that'll put us, I guess, when do we find that out, I guess, as a city, not as a city residents, I guess?
We will begin to get the first sense of the assessed, so the property tax valuation is set as of January 1st each year for the next fiscal year. So January 1st, 09 sets our assessed valuation for the 9-10 fiscal year. The assessor has started to work on doing all that he needs to do to certify the property tax roll. We as finance directors in Alameda County will get the first sense of that in March. He has been very good, Russ Hall has been very good about reporting to cities on a monthly basis as he works through everything that they need to do, which is primarily appeals. Much of that work has to do with appeals, but also new construction and transactions. It will be in August, I believe, late July or August, when we actually have the certified roll available to us. And we'll see at that point just how much we have been affected by the Prop 8 assessments down there.